G'day, guys. Welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to a very, very special podcast. This is the mid-season NBL SuperCoach review. That's right, NBL. So we know the BBL's coming up, AFL probably in 3 weeks, I think. That's my guess anyway. Very keen for that. But we are talking some NBL SuperCoach today. And on the channel, I have an absolute legend, not only of the NBL SuperCoach community, but also the AFL SuperCoach community. And that is my man, Vern from Vern SuperCoach. So, g'day, mate. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me be here, DR. Just absolutely stoked. I'm so excited. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Well, mate, I've been watching all of your NBL content this year, and you are having a ripping season, mate. So we'll talk about your channel. We'll talk about how you're going in SuperCoach in a little while, mate. But before we do that, I want to get to know the man behind the SuperCoach channel. Tell us a little bit about yourself, mate. You know, what makes you tick? What floats your boat? Tell us about Vern, the actual human being, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm someone that I've always been into my sports. I've loved it since I was a kid. I was one of those guys that, I'd play 2 basketball teams and a footy team. I'd be at training every day, if not playing games. Some days you'd be, training for footy, playing basketball in the afternoon or vice versa sort of thing. So always been really into my sports. Sort of actually fell away from my sports when I got towards my sort of later teens, early 20s. I kept playing them, I guess, but not really watching them. I used to, be very big into watching them. And then SuperCoach really brought me back into watching, footy at the end of the day, got me into AFL. A few guys at work were playing a league and decided to get involved. And, first 3 years I did it, I really just played sort of for the league with the work boys. And, people went their separate ways and whatnot. And by that stage, I'd finally sort of fallen in love with the game. I'd won the very last sort of work league we'd done. And decided to start focusing on an overall rating, and decided to turn that into a YouTube channel, which I've been going for about 2 years now. We had pretty disappointing first AFL year, great second year, which is obviously the year that's just come. We did finish 317th, so was a good finish last season. Thank you. And I've always been a huge fan of like statistics. Like I love statistics. I love those numbers. And so when I told my friends I was like playing AFL or like fantasy sports, they all just sort of nodded their heads like, that makes sense. Like putting 2 of Vern's like favorite things together, that makes a lot of sense. So now I've been doing this, and obviously we're doing the NBL, which basketball, I play it actually twice a week. I play Wednesdays and Thursdays still, even currently. Cool. So that's me.
Oh, excellent, mate. Well, I'll tell you what, given the factor in the data and the stats, you'll get along very well with one of the co-hosts of the SuperCoach Swordplay podcast in Janeth, mate. So a very big stats man himself. So you've certainly got that in common. And look, I'm with you. I really love the basketball too. I played for years and years and years. But I sort of had a bit of a forced retirement, mainly from my wife, mate, because this is the last 3 games I played, not consecutive, obviously breaks in between. But I fractured my cheekbone. Then I ended up breaking my ankle. Then I ended up breaking my pinky as well. Comeback game. And my wife said, because she's the one who has to look after me, mate, when I'm sooking and carrying on at home. I don't have one of the little bells, but close to type thing, mate. And she said, nah, I'm going to make the decision for you. Retirement's on the cards. Maybe play a bit of golf or something to keep yourself occupied. So, big fan of the basketball myself, mate. But, unlike you, I've hung up the boots, but very impressive, mate. A couple of days a week. Now, tell me, what basketball team do you actually follow, mate? So have you got an NBA team, NBL team?
I've got to be honest, no. Even though we're doing the NBL SuperCoach, it's not something that I've been into. I've always enjoyed watching. I don't mind sitting down watching it. My brother used to sometimes be on the TV when I, at the family home, just put sports on. Why not? And I can't help myself but sit down and watch it, and just love watching basketball in general. But I've never really had a team in it, sort of thing. I mean, I guess if I had to choose one, it'd be South Melbourne, just because it's where I'm from. So just got to pick the local team.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. It's excellent, mate. I suppose a good thing is is that you're not going to be, biased with particular players from your favorite side. You can be an absolute neutral and legitimately enjoy every game, mate. Not get too upset. You can get upset about their SuperCoach scores, absolutely, but not necessarily with the results of the game if you don't have your own side, mate. Now, we know you do AFL. Tell me, who do you support in the footy, Verns?
Dear.
I can already tell.
Look, I feel like you lost a bet at the end of the season because I'm a Pies man, and it seems like everyone you're having on your show at the moment is a Pies man.
I
So
can't escape it, mate. I bloody Scobie the other day, the BBL podcast, another bloody Pies man giving me crap. I'll tell you what, mate. Let's end the podcast now. Thanks for watching, guys. Now that I found out Vern's a Collingwood man, he's going to piss off. So, no. In all seriousness, congratulations, mate. I'll tell you what, it's a bloody good feeling, isn't it? Yeah, we had that three-peat. I was about 18 at the time then, but isn't it a bloody good feeling? It's hard to beat when the grand final, isn't it, bud?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, considering when I started finally getting back into footy was probably when we lost to Eagles in that massive come from behind from them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to get it under our belt this time, whew, it definitely felt good.
Very, very well deserved, mate. Very well deserved. Now, before we get into this basketball chat, I'm going to put a bit of a challenge out to the community here because I was checking out Vern's channel, as I do every week, and there's been an absolute robbery here. There's some criminal activity going on at the moment, Verns, because Vern isn't even up to 200 subscribers yet. And this is absolutely criminal because the work that he does, I can absolutely vouch for this as a regular viewer, is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to put a bit of a challenge out there. I want you guys that are viewing right now to make sure, and you can pause the video now or go there at the end of the video. I want you to go to Vern's channel. I want you to check out his latest round review. It's going to be the Round 9 NBL SuperCoach review. And I want you to leave a comment there. Anything you want, DR sent me here. And anyone that does that and subscribes to the channel, I'm going to put your name on one of the wheel of names. And the lucky person, whoever gets drawn out, you can either choose to be in a BBL SuperCoach league with Verns and I, if that's more of a game that floats your boat, or else I'll guarantee you a spot in one of our SuperCoach leagues, AFL, in the upcoming season as well. So that's a bit of a challenge to the community. We need to get this great man up to 200 subscribers because it is absolutely criminal. I cannot believe it. It's all about the algorithm. So, Verns, that's a challenge, mate. And I reckon we're going to get you to 200 subs very, very quickly, my friend.
Oh, look, I don't doubt you. I mean, if I was watching this video right now, I know I would have been pausing it and running over to whoever's channel it was to add it in.
Exactly. Go there now, people. Make sure that you go there now. All right, Verns, we've got to know you now, mate. Let's get into this actual NBL SuperCoach talk, buddy. So, first of all, mate, how have you been going this season? So, talk about your season to date because I've been following you really, really closely. You've had some fantastic results. Give us a bit of a season update up to now, mate.
Yeah, look, it was a bit. Look, it started off super hot. Like I was so ecstatic at the start of the season. Round 1 ends, and I was ranked 15. And look, it was one player like alteration between like rank 15 and winning the chocolates for round 1. But I was stoked. I'd never seen double digits on my SuperCoach account ever. Like I would, well, not for an overall rank, that is. I was absolutely stoked with it. And look, I just tried to run with the fire, probably played over aggressive early, trying to chase those total points and keep my score up rather than playing a little bit smarter. And unfortunately, after a rank 15 start, then a rank 14, 13, I eventually dropped down to the 50s, 40s, 50s again. And then the last 2 weeks had an absolute collapse of the season, dropping about 300 places back last week, about another 100 now. So I've lost about 400 places in the last 2 weeks. And unfortunately, I'm sitting at like 428 or so. But look, it's been a great start to the season. And at the end of the day, I made some pretty risky plays, bringing in someone like, for those that obviously do follow the NBL, Lee from Tasmania on his double week, trying to get a bit of a pod move in there, and unfortunately didn't work out. But look, they're the moves you got to make sometimes, because as we sometimes talk about, what's the point of having a good season when you could have maybe won the whole thing if you just went a little bit more, ball to the wall, mate, sort of thing. So look, went a bit ham, might have lost a fair few places, but you know what? I had a bit of fun doing it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, mate, given the fact you are so high in the ranks, you know that you can get there again. This game can be very, very volatile. Even last week, the difference between having McCall on your court as compared to Bannon, I don't know how many ranking points that equates to, but when you're at the top echelon, that 50, 60, 70 odd points, whatever it was, geez, it goes a long way, doesn't it, mate, in the overall ranks? It
Yeah.
can be just one slight move. And we'll, a little bit later on in the video, talk about some best trades, worst trades, and maybe in your case, a bit of a mistrade that we talked about pre-podcast. We'll get to that in a little bit, mate. But look, myself, just very quickly, mate. So my overall rank at the moment is 1,171. For me, my goal at the start of the season was just to learn the game. I hadn't watched a lot of NBL basketball in a fair while, to be honest, mate. So the best thing for me so far, probably about playing NBL SuperCoach, is getting that passion back for actually watching NBL games. And, the quality is fantastic, mate. It's not NBA type stuff, but plenty of ex-NBA players or players who've had NBA experience playing in this league. Blokes like Lamb at the moment, I'm just loving watching. So for me, that's been a really, really enjoyable experience for me, mate. But probably the issue for me, and we'll talk about adjusting to some of the different formats, because we know that the game of AFL SuperCoach compared to NBL SuperCoach and then compared to BBL SuperCoach, there's so many different nuances there, so many different strategies, ways of playing the game. Trades a little bit different. How many rounds have we got? It is so different depending on which format that you're actually playing, mate. And one thing that lots of people may not know if they haven't played NBL SuperCoach, which is extremely unique, is the fact that your bench players actually count for your total score. 50% of their score goes to your round score for the week. And what really killed me was not really focusing on upgrading the bench. At the start, it was all about, let's just get these double game players in. And I didn't focus on cash gen. And I'm pretty embarrassed to admit this, mate, but I still have a man by the name of Benny Henschel, big bad Benny Henschel, sitting and stinking up my pine. There's been so many times I've gone to move the bugger on. I'm just tempted into this double. It's a killer. I've got Galloway from Adelaide sitting there as well. So that's a huge lesson learned for me. At the start, I just wasn't focusing on my cash gen. But what I've been able to do, and this is just in the last 2 weeks, mate, is go from an overall team value of around 2,200,000 to now 2,550,000. So now that I've started to focus on that money more than just the double game players, and I'm able to do that having those Cairns players in, that's really allowed me to upgrade one of my bench spots to a Magnay, for example, over in Oldbridge, as one example, mate. So that's a big lesson that I've learned, is that, geez, you need to get that balance right between trading in those double game players, but also making sure that you're generating points and money on your bench. So is that something you found challenging, mate? Or were you able to sort of build up that bank right from the start and start to trade out your Henschel types and continue to upgrade?
Yeah, well, look, honestly, with having the hot start that I had, a lot of the players that I had in my team were just value picks at what they were. So the bank was automatically generating just from them being underpriced. I just had them early and I didn't have to worry about rushing them in. People were jumping on Jalen Galloway as fast as they could after his round one performance. He had a great role going into the season with Hogg unfortunately injured. He was someone I started in my team. I didn't have to worry about rushing him in. I did unfortunately get baited into holding Henshaw a lot longer than I needed to because of that great round one score that he got. And we thought, okay, so that's possible that in blowout games, he's going to jump on and he's going to lead like the third string team sort of thing if it's a blowout. But it's not the case anymore. It's not what Perth are doing at all. It's not what they decided to do. It was just a round one teaser to ruin all of our SuperCoach seasons.
Yeah, buggy you SuperCoaches. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. But look, it's definitely been hard, and you can see the guys at the very top were the guys that were onto this straight away. Because I also fell into the trap, as I said, I was chasing points. I had a great starting rank, and I was like, okay, this is a good starting rank. Let's keep trading aggressively for these double game premiums to try and push the points and stay ahead of the curve. And the guys that are up there right now, they didn't do that. They actually made the sideward switches to get in like Harrison from Brisbane, Norton from Brisbane, these guys that were cheaper that you run on your bench, but they were valued very high because of the injuries that happened to Shannon Scott, Baines getting suspended, just things happening throughout the season that just increased their value, and they were just good picks to get on. But the thing was, if you're getting on them, it meant that you weren't getting on these double game premiums that you mentioned. And look, as I said, I personally valued the premiums over the cash gen, and it was the wrong play. I think at the end of the day, I think the cash gen that they made, as well as the points they put out, as you mentioned, the bench players score. So as much as it might not seem as important, these bench players coming out with good scores, as well as making money, it's huge at the end of the day. And we did have the Melbourne United really good run early. So we had a lot of United players in our team early on. So we probably could have just accepted, we've got the premiums there already. Let's focus on the bench and get the rookies right. But unfortunately, got a bit greedy.
And the thing is, mate, we're both new to this game as well. So I think always your first year in a particular fantasy or super coach format, it is a real learning curve, isn't it? You make mistakes, hopefully you learn from them, implement possibly a better strategy the season after. And I know playing AFL Supercoach, it took me a good few years to really get to know what I was doing, because there's so many intricate details to the game. It seems pretty simple. Pick your players, off you go, there's your team. But the amount of research that you need to do, strategy, sometimes, team structures when it comes to AFL. Do you go your guns and rookies, your mid-price madness? There's so many things that make up the game of Supercoach depending on what format you play in. So given the fact that it's your first year doing any sort of NBL fantasy, which really did blow me away with the knowledge that you've displayed already this year, mate, it was a real surprise to me, mate. So a big congratulations. That was a shock to the system. I thought you'd been a seasoned veteran, at least of the NBA form of fantasy, mate.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, just reading the rules, as weird as that sounds, like I'm not usually someone that I sit down and I just read the rules. But you know what? Since I decided to put in YouTube content, I'm like, I can't put out half-baked content. It's just not good enough. So, I actually went into the details, actually read the rules, read how the scoring worked, read how the trades are going to work, how many boosts we have, and actually worked out, we've got unlimited boost. So if we have unlimited boosts, then if I set myself up that I already know who my first two trades are after round one, obviously that's going to work a lot better. So yeah, it just happened to be one of those things that I definitely put in a bit more effort there. I mean, look, I remember my first season of AFL that I signed up for it, started a league with a workmates. They invited me to come play, didn't know what I was doing. And I remember after round one having to realize, there's all these 123K rookies that actually play and get points. I need to get all these guys in my team. And I remember trading down to get Tim Kelly, because that was the year Tim Kelly came onto the scene, dropping 100 points as a 123K rookie and just trying to get all those players. And I spent the first probably half of my trades trading down Elliot Yeo to Tim Kelly, and then using the money elsewhere to get this 102K rookie up to 125K rookie sort of thing. So look,
you live and you learn.
Oh yeah, look, as you say, we learn as we go. But look, reading the rules, I mean, that's super helpful too. Who knew?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very much looking forward to your AFLs, because as you said, mate, around the 350 mark last year, bloody phenomenal finish, mate. Now, let's talk about some positives here, mate. Let's talk about your best round of the year. Is there a particular round that stands out, mate? That maybe, your overall rank, was it a really good round rank? Can you think of a particular round where you were just a big, big fan of your own work?
Oh, look, it's got to be my round one at the end of the day. I got to be honest. I was sitting there licking my lips afterwards thinking, I'm bringing home the chocolates. And look, I don't want to be cocky, but at the grand final, I had all my cousins, my friends over for the grand final. And I remember telling my cousin, I'm like, I'm going to win NBL SuperCoach. You wait for it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to have a new car in a few months. Just wait for it. And look, I was messing around a little bit, but then all of a sudden the round starts. My players are popping off. I'm looking at it and I'm just like, I could actually do this. As much as I might have been joshing with them a bit, I could actually do this. And so I think that's just got to be the number one, because it's just an ecstatic feeling of seeing that 1-5 to start the season.
Oh, could only imagine.
What about you, DR? I haven't heard anything about your season yet. I want to. What about you? What stood out for you?
Look, I've been a little bit up and down, mate, but I'd have to say, and I've actually got you and a couple of the other boys to thank for this. My best round was last round, because I ended up deciding to go through with a boost. Originally, I wasn't keen on using a boost. I really wanted 2 in the bank. Then I thought to myself, looking back to AFL Supercoach, and I mentioned that a fair bit, I was left with a boost last year, an unused boost, and that was an absolute killer. Let me tell you, mate. It was like, there's a cookie right at the top of the cupboard that Mum's put there in the jar, and you just can't get to it. You know that it's there, but it's gone. It's gone off by the time you can actually reach up and get to it, mate. It was absolutely shattering. So I thought I'm actually going to go through with the boost last week. So it was actually I actually managed to bring in Miller and McCall, who were the 2 obviously highest scorers of the round, as well as Magnay as well. So with Miller and McCall, I actually traded out Sauce. I was originally keen on keeping Sauce because I knew the double's coming up. I knew he's basically a must-have. But I thought at the same time, I don't mind that break-even of McCall. I'm a little bit iffy on Bannon. I obviously don't know he's going to get concussed, but I was liking what McCall did. And so I decided to go through with that boost and get, as I said, the 2 highest scores of the round, as well as Magnay, who made some really nice coin. And he'll have a couple of doubles coming up as well. Just nice to stash him on the bench. And 471 for the round score, mate. So I know there was some 500s out there and some wonderful scores. But for me personally, mate, I was pretty wrapped with that. But I did put a question out on Twitter. Do I go through with the boost? Because I was so 50-50 about it. And I tagged Vern, I think was the Insight Boys, a couple of other people there, and they all said, go ahead with it. Make sure that you go through with it, mate. We think that's a good use of the boost. And in the end, it was a difference between, because Bannon would have been on field, because I still thought that was a fine move. Bannon with a double. Yeah, get me on field. That's no worries at all. But given the fact I was able to get Tahj on, and geez, those poor people, mate. I was playing Causa. We love Causa, ladies man Blackledge. I was playing him in a in a league match, and he's beaten me literally every week of the season. Our first matchup, I come home with the chocolates there. So he had Bannon on, the poor bugger, and just didn't work out for him this week. But that's probably for me, mate, is the latest round. So hopefully, mate, I can continue this form, and I'll just be wrapped to finish in the top 1K, mate. If I can manage to do that, I'd be really, really happy for the year. I don't have as high expectations as what you do, mate, and I genuinely think that you can make a big comeback, mate, and have an absolutely top-notch finish. But pretty happy so far this year, mate. Pretty happy. Yeah, can't complain.
No, awesome. I think the worst thing about the cookie analogy too is, as you said, you've already gotten up to that jar and you've already pinched the first 4 cookies, and you know there's one more left. You saw it at the bottom of the jar, and Mum's just moved it to a higher shelf, and you can't get it anymore. You know it's there.
Absolutely, mate. Nothing more frustrating, I'd say, but I'm going to make sure I use all my bloody boosts this year. I'll guarantee you about that, mate. Now, let's get in now. Again, I don't want to get too negative here, mate. Let's talk about your worst trade of the year so far. Now, it could be a worst trade, or it could be maybe a non-trade. Does anything stick to mind, mate?
I mean, anyone that's watched my channel, I think they all know exactly what it is. And round 6, Perth are coming up for 5 games over the next 3 rounds. That's as many as any team's going to have. Absolute perfect time to jump on them. And I was so big on Doolittle. I really wanted him. I'd sort of mentioned that Doolittle's been playing at this price where he got a -2 in his system. And as we know from any Supercoach game, if you go down with an injury early and you get a poor score, it tanks your value. And then you get on that player when they have a nice low break-even, low cash, jump on them, and you make it worthwhile. And Doolittle had dropped to about 170K. I was saying, look, he's probably about a 22 average player. He's worth at least 50 to 80K more than what we see here. To be fair, Doolittle ended up being worth about 150K more than what we saw there. He was way better than we thought he was.
Yeah.
And I even ended my round review with Doodle in my team, but I decided the risk of Pinder's upside, who had seen only a couple of weeks ago against Adelaide drop 50 points, and coming into that round playing Adelaide again, I thought Doolittle is going to come out, do some good things, and it's going to be great. But I think Pinder's going to blow him out of the water score-wise, and with that, he can probably keep up with the cash. Doesn't end up happening that way. In fact, Pinder ends up being dreadful over those next 3 rounds, gets outscored by Doolittle by a ton. Doolittle ends up making a good 120, like 150K over that period of time. Pinder loses like 50K, and it just ends up this huge mess where as I sort of mentioned, like I'd checked out the teams. I usually look at the top 5% of teams, top 1% of teams, just because we know the player base in NBL sort of drops off. It's sort of dropped off already. And so for an accurate reading, you sort of want to look at that top 5% to 1% of players. And nobody had Doolittle in the top 1%. And I could have been that one guy that picked him up, chose against it, and it just absolutely murdered me on the backside. I couldn't believe, first of all, how good he was. Like, I think I mentioned this in the pre-podcast, but Creek earlier in the season, I think the week before, he was sitting down for like a Cairns game or something, and they just happened to, I don't know, I guess he was just there as a guest, and he was talking about Doolittle, and he was like, Doolittle's actually really good. I played with him in the Portugal league. Like, this guy's insane. We haven't seen what this guy's made of. You know, what we've seen so far, it's not the Doolittle that I know he can be. Like, he's going to be insane. Like, he's way better than this. And as much as Creek talked that up, for him to then come out and sort of do that the 3 weeks after I decided not to get him and show us that he was this Doolittle that Creek had seen. Yeah, as I said, he was someone that was 170K that was playing at the level of a 300K plus player. And instead, I brought in someone who was 370K, was playing at the level of a 200K player. So sort of blew my season up with that one trade, in my opinion.
Oh, mate. That's another thing we were talking about as well, is the fact that you literally watch every NBL game. And you do it in a very, very smart way. We were talking pre-podcast, and Vern says, I very rarely actually watch it live. I watch on the replay because when they've got the timeout set up, bang the old fast forward button. Talk about time management, my friend. I'm very, very impressed with that. I'm loving your work there. But again, that goes to show the dedication that you've got to have in order to achieve a really, really solid rank in any form of SuperCoach. You know, I don't think that whatever type of game you play, if you're not up with the news, if you're not actually watching the game, I'm massive on the eye test, on my own eye test. I hate relying on other people's opinions and thoughts. I like to make my own when it comes to particularly AFL SuperCoach. But I love that you do that with your NBL, mate, as well, because every decision that you make is based off your eye test. You're listening for this news, hearing the interviews, those little tidbits like that interview with Mitch Creek, getting a little bit closer to getting on the Doolittle train. They're all the things that make a really, really good coach, mate. And I think that's another reason why your NBL content is absolutely top notch. So absolutely love the fact that you actually watch every game and get to fast forward the boring bits.
Yeah, I mean, look, even with that, as you mentioned, like the timeouts for one, but even when they get to the free throw line, it's like if they score the points, I'm going to see it on the scoreboard. If they miss the points, it's nearly always a defensive rebound. If it's not a defensive rebound and something's actually happened, I'll actually go back and watch those 15 seconds. But you know, you sit there on KO. I just hit the plus 15 twice when there's two free throws, and 9 times out of 10 they're just inbounding the ball, and it's like, oh, cool, they clearly hit them both because the score's gone up by 2. And, you know, just get through it nice and quick. And yeah, it just makes it a bit easier, I guess, because, you know, AFL, we can't do that. It's a game that you got to be watching every second, and it's a 2-hour game, full stop. You're not going to fast forward any of that. But yeah, these NBL games, we can cut them down to a much closer, 45-minute wrap and get it out the way nice and easy.
Time management, mate. That's one thing that my kids at school always say to me, because I give them feedback, I give them goals. And I often say, what's some feedback to me? What's the goals? Organisation, time management is the number one thing they always say, mate. So I can learn off you, Verns. I can learn off you, mate. I'm very, very impressed with your work, mate. Look, probably for me, when we're talking worst trade, is in round 4, I traded Brown in for Cotton, and Brown absolutely stunk it up on the double. And to make things worse, I actually gave him the captain's armband, mate. So for me, that was a real killer. I was very close to the top 1K. Went out, I think, to about 1,1500 after that. But I actually finished round 1, 600 and something. But what I noticed was there was so many people with the same score as me, because there was, it's a very common players to start, bench players, all the rest. But probably for me, mate, that one really stings, bringing Brown in and captaining him. Nothing worse than making a bad trade, but then making it even worse, highlighting that by chucking the C on him. It's like, damn, it can make a big difference getting that captain right, can't it?
Yeah, look, it's really funny. 2 things I think of in that situation. First of all, if you remember in one of my round reviews, maybe you don't, I called out Shots, somebody who actually messages me on Twitter a bunch, talk about our teams and, what you should do and whatnot. And he asked me about bringing in Brown one of these weeks. And I was like, oh, no, like, there's just better picks, man. Like, Brown's very volatile. He could have a massive game, so he could be the pick, but he could also not be the pick. And I think it's the same week of people like Doyle and stuff. I'm like, there's just safer, more consistent options out there, in my opinion. And this man turned around and went, stuff, yeah, I don't care. I'm bringing in Brown. You know what I'm doing? I'm also going to put the captaincy on Brown. And that's the round Brown went off and got like 80 points. And I was just like, okay,
man.
well, you know what? Apparently telling
Well
me
done.
go yourself works too. So good luck.
That's the thing, isn't it? You can, with some of these games, you can just go from the low dungeons to just those real highs. And Brown, the two examples we've just talked about then are a perfect example of that, isn't it? You know, the highs and lows of owning some of these players, mate. Jeez, it can be frustrating, can't it?
Yeah, look, I was almost in the same boat as you as well with the Lee pick. When I brought in Lee, as crazy as it sounds, I considered captaining him because of how good Tasmania's matchups. They had Cairns and they had New Zealand, who are both awful into centre players who scored big games. I was like, oh man, should I do it? Should I do it? I decided not to do it. Fun fact, Pinder scored 29, Lee scored 29. It actually didn't matter.
Oh, that would have been a good story just to put it on him and say, well, at least I tried something, you know.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Even if I went Pinder, I didn't win, so it doesn't matter.
I love it. Now, talk about trades, mate. We get 4 boosts in NBL SuperCoach.
Yep.
Personally, I've used 3. I've got one up the sleeve. I used that one last week. I'm not keen to jump on this week, as tempted as I am. But how about yourself, mate? How's your boost use been so far this year, and how many have you got left to play with, mate?
Yeah, so I've also used 3. I've only got 1 left. And honestly, with the 3 I used, 2 of them I'm pretty happy with. One of them was actually an awful pit boost. Like I never should have done it. And somehow I got rewarded. So round 2, after my rank 15 start, I just wanted to keep rolling with this hot hand. I was like, oh man, what a start. I love it. And look, we brought in the United players originally because they played 4 doubles in 5 rounds. But round 2 wasn't one of those rounds. And I ended up boosting Dellavedova out of my team. One of the men that was worth crazy good money at the time. He got like the 3rd highest amount of points in round 1. And I ended up boosting him out of my team the following round. And it was a bad decision. I never should have done it, but I just got so greedy. I just saw the points in front of me. I saw the rank 1 possibility and I was like, I've got to do it. And I just made this crazy play that I never should have done. Next thing we know, Delly ends up getting a concussion, being an absolute nightmare for anyone that owns him because you don't know when he's coming back. Then when he comes back, he was kind of bad. And then he went back out again, sort of thing. And he just torched anyone that held on to him. And somehow this awful boost play that I made to start the season gave me absolute dividends somehow. And I just didn't deserve it. But
I'm going to check the DeLorean out in front of your joint, mate. You going back to the future or something here, have you, mate? And so on, Dally, time to go, son.
Oh man, anyone would have been a bit suspicious of that. It's like if you traded Cotton this week on a single game, like, oh man, Per's run looks terrible. I shouldn't bring him in, and then get 66 points out and be like, yep, that's how it's done.
Mate, yeah. Well, look, that's a pure example of the SuperCoach gods, isn't it? Sometimes they reward you, and sometimes they absolutely spite you with all their fury, mate. They're a volatile. Look, I hate to say anything too negative about the SuperCoach gods because they are always listening. So, apologies if I have offended anyone there. And Vern is not a part of this. Don't strike down on his NBL season anymore, please, SuperCoach gods. Now, mate, we've talked a little bit about the season to date, how our season's sort of gone. Talk about some good trades, worst trades, how I've used the boost, etc. We're about halfway through. So round 9's just finished. We're coming up to round 10, and there's 20 rounds in total for the season, mate. So what I think is important now, mate, what I like to do in a minute, and I'll chuck a graphic up, is have a look at a bit of a fixture focus. Which teams have the doubles from now until the end of the season? Where are those buys, and which teams may we look to start trading out of at the moment, mate? So let's get this visual up, buddy, and we'll see who's looking at some double game weeks. All right, here we are, mate, with this awesome visual. Now, this is not my work. I'm not going to claim this work at all. This is a work of an absolute legend on Twitter by the name of Arson Dragon. So what I'm going to do is, in the description of this video, I'm going to put his Twitter handle there, because he's an absolute legend, and he's come up with a much better visual than what I was planning to use. Vern actually said, mate, we've got to get this up because he's a terrific fella, Arson Dragon, and he's just put a terrific format here for us, Vern. So, mate, as we can see, rounds 2 to 9 are absolutely irrelevant now. We need to look at rounds 10 to 20. So the thing that sticks out for me here, mate, is Cairns. Have a look at that run, mate. So we got obviously 10, 11, 12, 13, 4 games in a row from Cairns. Then they have a couple of singles. Then we've got the double again on round 16. We can see a block of 6 there, actually 2 blocks of 6. First one isn't relevant at all. That was Melbourne at the early stage of the season. But from rounds 15 to 17, we can see that Illawarra even have 6, then a single, then 4. Some very, very interesting fixtures here, mate. We can see lots of 4s there as well. But is there anything that stands out for you in particular, mate? Is there a team that we should really be looking to load up on now, or plan to have some players from a particular team in our teams now in preparation for some doubles, mate? Is there anything that really stands out to you when you look at this awesome graphic?
Yeah, so first of all, as you said, huge shout out to Austin Dragon. I remember when he originally posted this, I grabbed this. I ended up sending it to myself on Facebook just so I could keep the visual. I didn't want to lose it. And I've been following this all year. A lot of the times when I'm doing my SuperCoach videos and I talk about Fixture, I've already got this up on, a second screen, look across to it, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's how we're looking, sort of thing. Because it's an absolute great visual to be following all season long. As you mentioned, it's only really relevant from 10 onwards here, but it's still very nice to follow. But the things that stick out, I guess, to me is obviously, as you mentioned, Illawarra having 6 rounds, 5 doubles. That's crazy. Unfortunately, Illawarra's players outside of Froling haven't been too reliable. But I think this is one of the reasons we're looking at saving those boosts. I think that once the one boost we have left, if you're not saving it for some sort of injury, I think we have so many Cairns players in our lineups. I know me personally, I've got 6 of them right now. For me to get off them in a reasonable time frame, I'm going to need that boost to get down from them. And that's when you can start looking at getting in these Illawarra players at that stage. There is a 1-week single in between in that situation. Maybe you can hold McCall and Miller over that period of time because they're good enough to play on their singles. But yeah, using that boost to maybe try and get onto those Illawarra players at that time, I think would be really, really good.
And one thing I noticed as well, when you see that Cairns fixture end, or their really great run there of 12 end on 13, if we cast to 14 and 15, we've got a team like Sydney on the doubles as well. So that's something that's really, really important. Something I've learned, mate, is we need to look ahead at schedule and fixture, don't we? If you don't do that in this game of NBL SuperCoach, then you can kiss a good rank goodbye. So when it comes to getting off the Cairns players at that time, as you said, if you've got a boost, that makes a lot of sense, mate, because there's lots of us at the moment that are stacked with Cairns players. And that is because of this run. You don't need to worry about it. And that's why I used that boost last week to get McCall in, even over a source. I thought, I'm just going to lock this bloke in for the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I've got bloody Ben Henschel, as I mentioned before, who I can even rotate with him if I need to. So to have him in that forward position, and I think that's been a really tricky position this year. I think Lamb's been an absolute godsend for us down there. Bannon's obviously performed really well when he's come in, made some good coin as well, although that break-even's starting to get a little bit iffy. I'm potentially looking to move Bannon on this week myself, depending on what I end up going through with, mate. But a lot of 4s there. Let's have a look at maybe the next 3 weeks, buddy. So we're coming into 10, 11, and 12. So we can see, obviously, Cairns are going to continue that great run. One thing that I'm looking at is 11 and 12, Southeast Melbourne and Tahj. And there's a bloke from Southeast Melbourne who, if we don't have in our sides for those 2 doubles, I just want to close my eyes and start rocking in the corner. And it's obviously Big Sauce as well, mate. So in your opinion, is that what 100% of teams should be doing, planning on getting Big Sauce in 11 and 12?
Honestly, 100%. Like, this man in the last 2 weeks, he's gone 240-plus games. A lot of us are running Wardenberg as our main center. Wardenberg on doubles have been putting out 30s, which in a lot of situations, you'd be like, 30 points from a player is good. Even if we had someone 100K more than Wardenberg, they're going to get 30 points on a single. So it's perfectly fine to be having him there. That's what we thought, but then Big Sauce comes out and keeps putting out, 45 and then 47 and just put him in the dirt. And it was just, it's one of those things that, as you said, if we don't get on Big Sauce and he does 2 back-to-back 40-point games like that. I mean, he has 4 games in 2 rounds to do that. There's a good chance he's going 40 plus, I'd say, in at least 2 of those. And his floor's been so high. Even in his bad games, he's getting like, I think the worst games has like 29 points. Like, this man just puts out massive scoring, super reliable captain, and just, you're not on him, you're going to get punished. So you definitely need to be planning for him. And I think, as you mentioned, over the next 3 rounds, I think looking at 3-round intervals is probably very important moving forward from here, because, you know, there's a lot of broken up fixtures from here. There's a lot of singles that cut in between and whatnot. So it's, what are we looking at? We're looking at the next 3 rounds. Southeast Melbourne, Sydney, Tasmania all have 2 out of 3 doubles. Yes, we all know Cairns has 3 out of 3. We all probably have 6 or 7 Cairns players, so it doesn't really matter. But for those teams, those are the ones that we want to look at right now. And as you said, Source, probably the most important one with how poor Wardenberg's been.
Couldn't agree more, mate. That's been a really frustrating spot for me, that center position. So I'm really looking forward to getting Source in. But with a player like Source, as you mentioned, he's so consistent, such a low floor, got such a high ceiling. Sometimes it's not as easy as just a straight swap, is it, mate? We may need to potentially sacrifice a bench, maybe not go for that other elite Uber premium. It's not as easy as it sounds. Let's just get Source in. So I really think that you need to be planning for this now. How am I actually going to get there? You don't want to get to just before the start of round 11 and go, well, shit, how am I going to get him in? Am I going to have to get a bench player down to a Henschel in order to upgrade another spot on my field? So I think that's going to be super important to make sure we plan for him. I want to talk about this week, though, mate, because I'm in a bit of a pickle myself. So this is really probably a selfish question and something I'm really unsure of at the moment. Now, at this stage, I'm looking to bring 2 Sydney players in their double. Adams, who's come down a little bit in price after a poor week a couple of weeks ago, and also Hogg as well. Big fan of DJ. I think that even possibly captain material. But at the same time, there's a man with the surname of Roberts who has lit it up, let's be honest, the last couple of games for Cains. We were talking pre-podcast about a potential role, about some potential minutes if he performs early that he could be receiving during these games. Did you have a bit of a feel, Verns, as for what you think the best move is this week? Because I guarantee you, mate, I'm not the only one in this position. I know there's going to be lots of people out there looking to bring in a couple of these Sydney players that have been scoring, performing really well, but also wanting to jump on, say, a Roberts to continue that cash gen. We know that he plays for Cairns. He's got that good run. And I'm worried maybe if I don't jump on him now, I'm missing, a fair bit of coin in the bank here. Is there something that you would look to prioritize? And I know it can be different week upon week, but with the players that we're presented with, if I would give you an example of Hogg, Adams, and then Roberts, would you be going towards that cash gen, or would you be looking to maybe just go with those double games, mate? Do you have a preference for it?
Oh man, that is such a tough question, because those are honestly the 3 picks of the week. Because in reality, with Sydney, as I mentioned, they have the double game, single game, double. But then if we look beyond the 3-week period, they then have a single and then 2 doubles again before a single and 2 doubles. If you pick up Sydney players, you can probably hold them all the way to round 17. Like, they can just rotate onto your bench in these single games, jump on the field with these double games. That means that you're not worrying about them. So you can get these Cairns players out of your team when you get to that period where Cairns is. So, like, Sydney players right now, especially Adam and Hogg, who have been so consistent and so good, like, they could be absolute diamonds. Like, they could be so much more value than the points they actually give, because they give stability to the team and allowed you to make trades elsewhere in the team. So honestly, I have so much value for them. I haven't spoken too much about it in my own review because I can't do that, and I don't want too many people to do that to me. So, but look, Roberts, I do agree. Roberts was sensational. Cairns, one of the bottom teams in the league, come out and beat Melbourne. And yes, they did it on the back of Miller being absolutely amazing. McCall, honestly, just doing what McCall's done the last few games, he's been really, really good and kind of consistent. I think that's 3 games in a row now. He's put out 40-plus scores. And then Roberts came with 38 SuperCoach points, which is obviously massive for NBL. But for a guy that's basically rookie tier price. As I said in my review, I think he's about 10.5 to 11 points. That's what he's priced at. And he put out 38 in one game just to show the difference in like the value that's there in his price. He is so nice and cheap. It's unbelievable. He was being so good for them in that game. And as I mentioned, like Cairns beating the top team, how can Ford, the coach, turn around the next week and go, wow, that worked really well. Roberts, you benched. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's going to turn around and be like, Roberts, jump back on the field, do what you did, and let's make playoffs. Let's do it. And after my review that I did this week where I talked about how good Roberts was and like there's no way Ford can move him out of the team, I swear 20 minutes later, Cairns put out an interview of Roberts and Ford. And I was like, oh, wow, this is exactly what I needed. So I jumped on, listened to that, and Ford sat there and he talked about consistency. He's like, look, we have suffered mainly from consistency as a team. We're just not consistent week in and week out. He's like, we came out the other week and I forgot who we lost to. We lost to, I think it might have been like Illawarra or something. But then like the game before we beat Sydney. And he's like, the consistency just isn't there. How do we play against top teams, take them down, play against these other teams that are struggling, and then lose to them? It makes no sense. You know, we're not consistent. We need to fix up our game. We need to fix up our consistency. And he's like, honestly, if Roberts comes out at the start of the next game, 5 minutes in, he's not doing his job on the bench. He's going to sit him. But he's like, if he shows up and he shows consistency, he does what he did today, he did what he did in the fourth quarter against Brisbane, he's going to be playing big minutes again. And so Ford's very much about results. So that's the dangerous thing with Roberts. If he doesn't show up, he could burn you. But he was so good in both, like as I said, the fourth quarter in the Brisbane game, and so good against Melbourne. Like he shut down JLA, who's being talked about as one of the best big men in the NBL league. He's come out and he's dropped 40 SuperCoach points consistently. And then in this game, I think he had like 20 something. Like Roberts actually went in there and handled his own against JLA.
That's impressive. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Cairns is that they've been relying on these sort of playmaking centers. Menenga, Warnenberg, they love to shoot threes, they love to shoot middies, they love to pass the ball, but they don't do that nitty-gritty stuff that other centers do. They don't get in the paint, get physical, get those putback dunks, stuff like that. Roberts did that. He got in there and he was physical with JLA. He blocked him, I think, he had 3 blocks. I don't know if they were all against JLA, but I swear he got him at least twice. Like he played a great game inside, and he was also a dunk threat. The amount of times Miller drove and JLA had to rotate because he's beating his man, and Miller puts it over his head, and Roberts gets a free dunk at the basket. There's a reason Miller got 10 assists this game. It wasn't just because he was playing out of his skin and his team was playing a lot better. It's because he had a dunk threat inside that when he drew the big man to himself, it opened up a passing lane for Roberts to score 3 points. And that's why he was so good. And look, someone else that also started in the lineup was Jonah Antonio, who I think was really good as well. He's also like a basement price rookie, I'm pretty sure. He's like $69K. He could be a bit of a shout too. But he did come out, and what we've seen of Antonio is anytime Cairns have run him, they've put him in the last 20 seconds of the game, last 30 seconds of the game, and they're like, okay, Antonio, go out there and catch and shoot. We don't care where you are. You got to catch and shoot because you're a 3-point specialist.
Throw it up, son.
And that's all we've seen from him. But then this time they were like, okay, our season's turning to crap. It's slowly slipping through our fingers. We need to switch it up. And they throw Roberts into the team. They throw Antonio into the starting lineup. And all of a sudden, they now have an outside shooting threat as well. Miller's driving. If you're not defending the inside, he was getting it to Roberts, who was scoring. If you're not defending the outside, he was kicking it out to Antonio, who's scoring a 3. And all of a sudden, Antonio's stretching the floor, making a bigger driving lane for McCall and Miller to make their aggressive moves inside, because we know they're not really 3-point shooters. Even though they shot 3s in this game, don't get me wrong, they were definitely
on the call those 3 in a row. Was it game 1? I think it was his first game round, wasn't it? Those bang, bang, bang. I was loving life. I brought this bloke in. I'm thinking, you little ripper. They were giving him the space, and I get why they gave him the space. Right? He hasn't been great from the outside, but the fact that he's just gone bang, 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 I jumped through the roof, mate. I was wrapped with that.
I remember the commentating at the time when he's hit that third one. The commentator's like, okay, Brisbane need to assess that. he's on tonight. You need to get out to those threes. And then he finished up
Yeah,
like 6 threes in that game against Brisbane. He went from like 6 from 7, went absolutely
unreal,
off.
man.
This man hit a bit of fire and he just went with it, which honestly seems like McCall. We've seen how this guy plays. He's highly volatile, and I could see him being someone that catches fire. I could see him someone in juniors that the coach sits there and he's like, okay, you need to tag this kid all game long, because the second he makes a bucket, he's about to make 10 straight after that. He could go the entire first 40 minutes of the game doing nothing, and in the last 5 minutes of the game gets one bucket, and all of a sudden he's the danger man. Like he catches fire, you know. But yeah, he was very good in the Brisbane game, and then he did the same thing in Melbourne. As you said, they gave him space, he hit some threes, and they're like, okay, we need to get out to him. And so much, like, outside of actually getting the points in the threes, how much damage that does. Because all of a sudden, now McCall's on one corner, Antonio's on the other corner, and the defenders have to respect them because they're hitting threes. And Miller gets his one-on-one with his guard, who he gets a bit of a body, fades back, makes a J, or he gets under them. JA was rotating, and then he's getting a pass to Roberts, and Roberts is finishing inside. And it was just beautiful from Cairns, who has sucked in offense. All season long, they have sucked in offense, and then they dropped 115 points against not only the flag favorites, one of the best defensive teams in the comp. Like that's crazy. And sorry, just something else that was mentioned in the interview as well is that they changed their offense. They started doing a flex offense, and a flex offense, it's more or less, it's just, look, I'm going to keep super simple to say it's different to what they were doing. It's a different style of offense as to what they're playing. And they asked Roberts they were like, oh, how do you feel about playing flex offense? And Roberts like, I'm super comfortable with that. I played it all of my high school career. Like when we drew it up and we only did 3 practices on this flex offense, and then we brought it into the game against Melbourne, I'm super comfortable with that. Like I know that offense. So that's another thing that might play in his favor is that Ford has changed the offense. It's an offense that Roberts has played throughout his high school career, and we just saw that offense work very, very well. So another thing that could definitely play to Roberts playing a big part, as well as big minutes going forward for Cairns, and really being that third superstar that Cairns need to step up with Miller and McCall. And it's funny because that's all their imports. Step up with their other 2 imports and just take Cairns all the way to playoffs. And so yes. So that's why Roberts is that's why I'm picking up Roberts. It's so hard to look past him. But as I've mentioned, if you go for Hogg and Adams, you're going to be holding them for 7 weeks, and it just lets you have a lot more flexibility with the other things you're doing in the team, the other roles. As you said, you can clean up a Henshaw on your bench if you really need, or a Galloway. Like it means that you don't have to worry about them. Saying that, Roberts, obviously, you won't have to worry about for the next 4 weeks either. So.
Mate, that is absolutely elite. Just the little bits of information there that you've picked up on, even that change of offense, the fact that he's had experience with that in college. There's some big green ticks there with this selection at the moment, mate. Now, we're not saying it's an absolute guarantee because he made an important point. He's got to perform. He's got to perform to get those minutes. So they're not afraid to sort of take him off for a little while. But what I also like about what you mentioned, mate, and a really good point you brought up, is that he does the grunt work, and it's a point of difference from those playmaking centers that they have got as well, your Wardenberg, Menenga types. That was another really good point. I was almost locking in these 2 Sydney players. It's okay. Here's a question, mate. If you're running with Roberts and you're going to keep on to the Wonder Boy, who are you fielding?
Look, in my situation, just so you're aware, Roberts is only forward eligible. He's not center eligible.
Oh, sorry, because I keep switching Warden, but I've got some DPP, mate. So I keep on.
Yeah. So Roberts isn't actually a center. So in reality, in my case, I have to run them both because it's either Wardenberg or Matiang or Menenga. Obviously, Matiang and Menenga both on singles, so Wardenberg's going to jump on the field for me. And then I've got the decision up top who I'm running, and I'm actually going to run Roberts right now on field, and I'm running Lamb on his single over Bull Quall on the double and stuff like that. Just because Quall's shown in the last few weeks that with the way the team lineups change, we have we have Miller who does all the Miller, McCall. Now we have Antonio shooting. Bullquall is the lockdown defender, and that's all he's doing. And the game's changed from the start of the season when Bullquall was playing 40 minutes because he was not just playing lockdown defense, he was offense for them as well. Now he's playing lockdown defense on the best players in the game. He's super physical, getting a lot of fouls, and his super coach has gone out the window because of it. And he's probably going to struggle to get 30 points. He's probably between 20 to 30 points on a double week, where I think Lamb's shown consistently that 30 points to 40 points is something he definitely does on a single week. So that's why I'm looking at that structure, even though I have someone on the double.
It's all to do with strategy, isn't it, mate? And I'll tell you what, watching Qual defend, it is legitimately like an AFL tag. Like, he's ferocious. He's tenacious, man. Like, dead set. It's like one of the hardest tags. And I haven't watched a lot of basketball, right? But it seems like one of the hardest tags this bloke puts on I've seen in a long time. He just sticks to that role. You know, he can push the limit a little bit at times with his physicality, but that's the ultimate role player, I suppose. That's what he's been asked to do, really focus on that defensive game. Yeah. As I said, we need more for our super coach sides, mate. I'll tell you what, that was basically like a little mini Cairns review. That was absolutely elite, mate, because I think we covered most players there.
You asked me who I support at the start of this. I mean, if you looked at my super coach team, you'd think I'm a Cairns supporter because of the way it's just filled with them. And I feel like I am the way I'm rooting for them every week because I've got so many players in their team.
Now that you say it, I'm the same because you've got so many players. They're the team that you want going well because that obviously leads to great super coach points, mate, which is why we're here. So absolutely, mate. I'd probably consider myself a Cairns fan at this stage anyway. When it gets to round 13, I may be a bit of a Sydney fan. Shit, Illawarra. Could I do it? I don't know. That's going to be interesting when we get to Illawarra.
I love that you also
butchered the pronunciation about every time I've said Illawarra. I've said it every incorrect way you can, I think, mate. I think I just got it right then.
Oh, look, I definitely don't think I've said it right. Then again, I say 90% of my words slightly wrong because my partner always points out that my accent just gets wrong.
Yeah.
But look, Qual, I love that you put out that the way he is in defense as well, because he gets berated by the commentators about how physical he is, sort of thing. But he really is. He really is so physical with them. And the amount of times the guy he's being super physical with, he gets an offensive foul for because they like push him off or something, or they just get fed up with it. And then I think he's getting a foul, and out of nowhere, it's a foul on them. And I'm like, what? Like, Qual literally has this guy like completely like this guy needs a restraining order on him. He's that far up in his grill, and somehow he's got a foul. But now Ford actually brought up Qual when he was doing his interview as well, and he was like, I think there's a wrong narrative about Qual. I think it's a fake narrative that's made up from the commentators. You know, people hear about these other, like, you know, I guess these basketball professionals talking about him, and I think he has a, you know, false narrative that's talked about him, and then that reflects in the reffing as well, sort of thing. And look, I heard him say that, and as someone that watches all the games, I'm like, Ford, maybe it's a different view down there on the side of the court, but I don't think it's a fake now. He is all over them all the time.
Absolutely, mate. But look, I respect him for it. That's the role he's been asked to play. And there he goes, mate. But I'll tell you what, mate, that was a really good chat. And for the people that have been watching anyway, make sure that you do go to Twitter/X, whoever you want to say it, and make sure you give this bloke Arson Dragon an absolute follow, because this is all his work. Fantastic stuff. As I said, Verns copied it into his Facebook so he can relate to it, use it when he's doing his videos. So shout out to you, brother. Thank you for your great work, and I appreciate you letting us use it here, mate. So, Verns, I'll tell you what, buddy, that is almost a wrap, I think, mate. We've talked about how the season's gone to date. We've talked about some trades for this week, who to look to bring in from what sides from sort of 10 to 20. It was an absolute pleasure, mate, having you on. And look, this is really the first time that we've actually sat down with each other and had a decent chat, mate. There's been some, you know, messages and DMs on Twitter and, you know, comments on YouTube videos and all the rest. But the best thing for me, mate, was not just to get inside your head when it comes to NBL SuperCoach, but to get to know you as a person, mate. So, Verns, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. And thank you very much for coming on, legend.
No, thank you for having me. I've had an absolute blast being here. Yeah, for a lot of us that obviously watch your channel for a long time, DR, absolute dream to be, you know, a guest on your show, and I've had an absolute time here. So thank you so much.
Oh no, you are too kind, mate. You are too kind. Look, and look, lots of people actually ask me, mate. This is really funny. I had a couple of messages, DMs the other week because I put my BBL team up and I said, oh, yeah, make sure you check out these guys with their content. And I had someone send a message through going, man, what are you doing spruiking up all your competition? You know, what's wrong with you? And my reply to that was, I don't see anyone that does content as competition. I see them as a part of the brotherhood. You know, we're a big community here. I want people watching other content. You know, there is so much great stuff out there. You know, when it comes to AFL, hopefully I know a bit of my stuff here and there. But with the BBL, the NBL, there are blokes like you, other people, you know, Damo, the Edge, so many great people that are doing content. So, yeah, that's one thing that I you know, I love about SuperCoach is the community that we build. I see no one as competition. I love, you know, helping people. There was people like, you know, George, you know, Damo from Jock Reynolds and Clarkie that really helped me at the start with my channel. And I probably wouldn't, you know, the channel wouldn't be what it is today without, you know, great people assisting me to get my content out there, mate. So, mate, again, before we let you go, where can we find you, mate? Because we know that you've just set up an X account. You haven't been massive on the socials so far, mate. But tell us where we can find you on YouTube and where we can find you on X, my man.
Yeah, so you can just find me at Vern SuperCoach on YouTube. As you mentioned, that's really the only place that people could find me previously. And I decided to get a little bit more involved in the community. And at the start of the NBL year, I actually made a X account, Twitter account, whatever you want to call it, and just been really active talking to people there. And that's just at Verns_SC. Feel free to jump on there, guys. Hit me in messages. There's a few people I talk about talk through messengers every week with, talk about our trades, all that. So yeah, definitely feel free to hit me up or even just at me on X and ask me like DR did, hey, do you think these trades I'm doing are correct? And if you disagree, it's going to work anyway, so don't worry.
Absolutely love it, mate. As I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. And guys, remember, I want to set that challenge that I mentioned at the start of the video. Let's get Verns to at least 200 subs in the next couple of weeks. You know, I'm really, really keen for this legend to get his content out there because it is elite stuff. As you would have listened during this, geez, we've been going for over an hour. Vern, how's that, mate? Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? I can absolutely talk some nonsense. I'll tell you what, but the quality of this, mate, from your end was absolutely spectacular. I could talk for hours and hours about SuperCoach, mate. And I'm sure that we will have many, many more conversations in the upcoming year, mate. And also look forward to having you on the SuperCoach Swordplay podcast as a guest from time to time when we get right into the AFL SuperCoach season, Vern. So thank you very much again for joining me, legends. Thank you very much, Vern, for coming on, mate. It'll be the first time of many. And stay tuned, guys. We will be putting out some BBL content during the season as well. As you know, I'm not an expert there, but happy to put out some round reviews, etc. And the AFL season is very much approaching us. So looking forward to that. But when it comes to NBL, we've still got half a season to go. So anyone that's playing the game, make sure that you jump onto Vern's channel, check out his round reviews, listen to his great advice. And I guarantee you that yourself and your team will be much better off for it. So thanks again, guys. Hope that you're well. See you soon in the next one. Cheers, Verns.
Peace, guys.